That house stood on the far edge of the old village, where the road had long been swallowed by weeds and the streetlights hadn't shone in over a decade. No one remembered who had built it or why it was abandoned, but everyone knew you didn't go near it. Even the children, fearless by nature, crossed to the other side of the path when passing by. The house looked alive. Empty windows watched in silence, reflecting nothing. Yet if you stared long enough, something inside seemed to shift. A faint tremor of movement behind the curtains. Moss crawled up the walls, the roof had caved in, and tall, black fir trees stood close, hiding it from daylight as if protecting a secret. Sometimes, late at night, a distant humming would rise from within, soft, rhythmic, almost human. Villagers told each other it was only the wind. But one autumn night, when the air was completely still and no leaves moved, the sound didn't stop, and no one dared to go near enough to find out why. For years, the place was left to rot, until a stranger appeared, a young architect named Derek. Recently returned from the city, he decided to buy the old property and restore it, turning the decaying structure into his personal workshop. The villagers tried to talk him out of it, but he only laughed. "I don't believe in superstitions," he said, walking past their leaning fences and pale faces. When he first entered the house, the air felt heavy, old, unmoving, as if trapped for decades. His footsteps echoed unnaturally loud, floorboards creaking like muffled sighs beneath his boots. Cobwebs hung in thick layers, trembling in the faint light of his flashlight. The smell of damp wood and dust filled the space. It wasn't until he reached the living room that he noticed the photograph. A faded black and white picture hanging crookedly on the wall. A woman with long hair stood by a window, her face turned toward the camera. Her expression was unreadable, yet her eyes were strangely alive, fixed directly on whoever looked at the image. For a brief second, Derek had the strange feeling that she was looking not from the photo, but through it. He turned sharply toward the doorway. The beam of his flashlight cut through the dust-filled air, but the hallway was empty. Still, the sensation didn't fade. Someone or something was watching him. The first night in the house was quiet. Too quiet. Derek unpacked his tools and spread out blueprints on the old dining table, trying to focus on his work. Yet even in the soft glow of his lantern, the shadows seemed to shift, as if the house were alive and aware of his presence. At one point, he thought he saw a figure at the window. A quick flash of movement, nothing more than a dark silhouette behind the fogged glass. He blinked, and it was gone. The air inside the house felt thicker, pressing against his chest. When he climbed the stairs to the attic, each step groaned like the house itself was protesting. Upstairs, the hatch creaked open, releasing a rush of cold, dusty air. In the dim light, cobwebs shimmered, and in the far corner stood an old, locked chest. Handprints were pressed into its dusty lid. One, much smaller than the others, looked almost like a child's. Derek froze. Something in him whispered that this was wrong, that he shouldn't touch it. Yet curiosity pulled him closer. Suddenly, a door slammed somewhere below, echoing through the empty house. The sound reverberated through the wooden floorboards and walls, freezing him in place. The air grew heavier, colder, as if the house itself were inhaling, drawing him into its pulse. He descended the attic stairs cautiously, gripping the railing tightly. In the hallway, the stale, musty scent of burnt wood seemed to hang thicker than air. He flicked the switch, nothing. Darkness. Only the reflection in the old mirror on the wall shifted. A shadow moved, quick, silent, gliding across the glass. Derek pressed himself against the wall, breath shallow. In the reflection, a woman appeared. Her face was blurred, as if seen through mist, but her eyes, two dark, motionless pits, were unmistakable. He spun around. Nothing. The hallway was empty. When he looked back at the mirror, the reflection was gone. And still, he felt it. The house was breathing, watching, waiting. That night, Derek tried to sleep, but the house would not allow it. The air was thick, sticky, suffused with a chill that seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. Every creak of the floorboards sounded amplified, echoing like whispers. And then the scent appeared, a heavy, almost sweet aroma of burning wax, ancient and strange. He woke to see a flickering light dancing on the walls. A candle sat on the table beside his bed. He hadn't lit it. The flame wavered but refused to die. Derek approached, uneasy. Fingerprints were visible in the wax. Long, thin, almost inhuman. A thud came from below, soft but deliberate. Something heavy had fallen. Derek grabbed his phone, no signal. The screen flickered and died. Footsteps, bare, wet, echoing in the dark. Slow, deliberate, growing closer. Frozen, he could do nothing but watch. The sound advanced toward him, and then, almost as if drawn by the candlelight, he saw movement in the mirror across the room. The flame stretched unnaturally toward the glass. Within the reflection, a face began to emerge. A woman, pale, with long hair, hollow cheeks, and dim, lifeless eyes. Around her neck hung a thin rope. The mirror cracked. The flame went out. Silence swallowed the room, heavy and oppressive. Derek's heart pounded, yet he could not bring himself to look away from the cracked mirror. He felt as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to make a move. From that night onward, the house no longer felt abandoned. Shadows moved in the corners, whispers came from the walls, and every candle he lit seemed to ignite by itself. The house was alive, and it had claimed its first guest. Derek could no longer ignore the sounds. From deep within the house, a murmur rose, soft, rhythmic, almost like chanting. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with it, as though the house had a heartbeat. One night, drawn by a sound beneath the floorboards, he found the trapdoor to the basement. It had been hidden under an old rug, nearly blending into the worn floor. With shaking hands, he lifted it. A draft of cold, damp air hit him like a wave. Downstairs, the darkness was nearly solid. The smell of wet earth and decay choked him. He turned on his flashlight, its beam cutting a narrow path through the shadows. The walls were covered in scratches, deep, uneven, like someone had been clawing to escape. Then he heard it, a soft cry. At first, he thought it was wind, but the pitch was human. A child's voice. The beam of his flashlight landed on something half buried in the dirt floor. Tiny footprints leading to the far corner. There, a cracked mirror leaned against the wall, strangely clean amid the rot. In its reflection, he saw her, the woman from the candlelit night, standing beside a small, pale child. Their eyes met his, empty and accusing. A sudden movement behind him made him whirl around. Nothing. When he turned back, the mirror had shifted slightly. The child's hand now pressed against the glass, reaching toward him. The walls began to hum, low, vibrating, pressing in on him. Derek stumbled backward, tripping over debris, his flashlight spinning in his grip. The voices grew louder, whispers now, angry, pleading, commanding. He ran up the stairs, pounding against doors that refused to open. Every hallway he entered seemed longer than before, twisting unnaturally. Behind him, footsteps followed, wet, dragging, echoing like someone walking through water. Finally, he reached the main hall. There, the largest mirror in the house reflected not him, but the basement. The woman and child were there, closer now. The rope around her neck swayed slightly. Her eyes locked on his. And in that instant, Derek understood. The house was not haunted, it was a trap. It had kept them all inside, feeding on fear, preserving itself through whoever dared enter. And now it had found him. The last thing he saw before everything went black was the reflection of his own terrified face. Not in the mirror, but on the walls. The whispers turned into laughter. In spring, when a commission arrived to assess the land, One of the workers accidentally fell through the rotted floor of the old house. He tumbled into the basement and emerged pale and trembling, saying he had seen human bones. Excavations lasted 2 days. In the cellar, they found the remains of 3 people: a man, a woman, and a child. Judging by the clothing, the family had lived there more than 40 years ago. Their bodies bore marks of strangulation. Near the bones lay an old mirror, cracked and smeared with wax and ash. It was carried outside, placed against a wall. By morning, it had somehow returned inside the house. No one could explain it. Villagers later recalled that a forester and his family had once lived there, a man, his wife, and their daughter. The forester was a recluse, strange, often wandering the forest at night, carrying candles, bones of animals, whispering incomprehensible words. People avoided the house. One morning, smoke rose from the chimney. When neighbors came, only ashes remained. The family had vanished. The house was rebuilt, but the mirror remained. A memory, some said. Every new owner first saw nothing unusual. Then footsteps at night, the scent of burning wax, and someone always whispering, "He lives beneath the house. Do not look into the mirror." The house is empty now, villagers say. Yet at dusk, a dim light can be seen moving inside. Sometimes, footsteps echo on the attic floor. And if you dare to look through the window at the mirror in the corridor, a woman with long hair stands there, always staring straight at whoever dares to see. The house waits. It has never stopped.